Hello. Thanks everybody for coming today. My name is Klaas Kwant. This is Noah DeSmit. We work here at GRCC in the media department, which means we're often recording presenters like he and I. In fact, this morning I was up in the booth running the camera, recording the people who presented in here. Noah was in the other room recording the folks presenting in there. We record a lot of different things on campus. Some of you we may have even interviewed as students for different promos for the college. We do a lot of videos for the staff and faculty at the college to teach them how to do different things. So it's kind of in a nutshell what our responsibilities are. I was thinking this morning as I was recording the two presenters that were here before me, what's different about the kind of writing we do from the kind of writing I heard the presenters talk about. And the presenters who were in here this morning anyway were talking about things they write about themselves, their own experiences writing in journals or authoring a book or communicating with publishers of the book, where what Noah and I usually do when it comes to writing is we're writing something on behalf of somebody else who is an expert in a particular field. And you're going to see a few examples of that today. So whether it is a chef here at the college or a math professor or the folks who are from the institutional research office, Noah and I don't particularly know a lot about any of those topics, but obviously we have professors who do, but they don't know how to do videos, or at least not particularly well. So we work with them to actually write the scripts to help people like you learn whatever it is they want to teach. So in a way, you could say we're translators of whatever they're an expert in. So that's my summary of our approach to writing for media here at GRCC. Anything you want to say?
No, yeah, I think that's pretty good. Maybe one thing to add, and that's, my name's Noah, by the way. Just to reiterate how Klaas mentioned, my name is Noah. It is Noah. One more thing to add, we do a certain kind of work at the college that requires us to know a lot of different skills. So I didn't go to school to become a writer. I didn't study English, but I did study audio and video. And because of this position that we're in at the college, often the writing falls on us. And I did actually do some writing before this position at a TV station, writing for promos, and I learned a lot there. But we're essentially a one-man band when it comes to making videos here.
So two-man, one-man band?
Sure, yeah, two-man, one-man situation. But if it's my project, I'm sort of doing everything. I'm writing, sometimes casting if we are casting someone, shooting, editing, getting approval, working with a client if it is a chef here at the college or a math instructor, whatever it may be, kind of doing everything. And so the writing process has been a learning process, and it is certainly different, I think, and uniquely different than what you may be hearing a lot about here at this conference because of what Klaas mentioned, how we're often interpreting for people who don't necessarily have the video skills but want to put what they know on the video. That's all I'd add.
I think we're lucky because we get a lot of freedom when somebody asks us to do a project for them. Granted, they're the content expert. In a way, they teach us first before we try to help them teach you. But as soon as they've given us just enough knowledge that we could actually write something that makes sense, we kind of run with it. And you're going to see that. So without any further ado, do you want to
let's
take off the first one?
Let's start talking about it. So what we're going to do in this presentation, we have 3 examples, 3 videos that we've created here, and we're going to talk about how we went about the writing process for each one of them and how we wrote it, what kind of inspired us to write it, and technically how we went about it and why. So we're going to have a video about creating characters, and then we're going to have a video about a simple learning object, and then we're going to have a video where the writing fills in the gaps of the storytelling. So this first example is about creating characters. Has anybody here seen a movie before? I don't know. It's okay. A few of you have seen a movie. Good. In movies, there are characters, and in most stories, there are characters. They're what drive the story. Does anybody have some favorite characters? Just characters from a TV show or a movie or Netflix, Hulu, what have you that you like? Cowboys. Why do you like cowboys? They can be pretty funny. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they're great for that. Anything else? Yeah. Mark Wahlberg. Well, that's an actor. Well, are there any characters he's played that you particularly enjoy?
He does always play the same kind of character.
He is kind of.
So.
Yeah, tough guys.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's all different kinds of characters that we like, tough guys, cowboys, and these characters have to be written, right? What needs to take place is someone sits down and writes these characters down, what they say, where they come from, who they are, what they do. And sometimes in our videos, we need to do that. Now, we're not making these long narrative stories. We're not making feature films with Mark Wahlberg or cowboys typically. Have we ever made anything with a cowboy?
Yeah. Say yeah.
Oh, yet. Not yet. If anybody has an idea for a cowboy video, see us afterward.
Yeah.
Or maybe not. So someone has to sit down and write down what these characters are, where they come from, what they say, what makes them who they are. And there's so many different ways you can build a character. And I'm going to talk about one way, but by no means is it the only way, the only correct way, so to speak. It's just one method that you could potentially use. And that method is really just drawing upon your own experiences. Whether it's yourself, how you feel as a character sometimes, because I'm sure if you're like me, sometimes you may feel like a very happy person, and sometimes you may feel like a very angry person. Sometimes you may feel like a very emotional person. Sometimes you may feel like a comedian. And so you can draw upon those experiences from within yourself. You can also draw upon the things that the people that you've experienced in your life. So that's what I like to do. I like to draw upon my own experiences to kind of flesh out characters. To give you some context for this video that we're going to show as an example, the institutional research and testing, or is it institutional? Institutional research here at the college. They do all kinds of research, including what you all think of your classes. Remember when you, at the end of your class, when you take a survey and you kind of let the college know what you thought of the class, what things you didn't like, what things you liked, how the instructor did. A lot of times the college has trouble getting students to fill that out. And so institutional research wanted to make a video to encourage students to, hey, after you have this class, fill out the survey. It really helps us. It helps you. It's good all around. Please fill out the survey at the end of your class. So that was the task that they gave us, and that I took on as a project, was a video that encouraged you to fill out those surveys. And what I decided to do was, I was a bit inspired by, you guys know Key and Peele, sketch comedy show. There is one sketch where there is an interpreter for former President Barack Obama, where Barack Obama's saying something extremely eloquently, and then there's an interpreter that says what maybe Barack Obama was actually thinking behind the guise of the eloquency. And that inspired me to think of an idea for this video for institutional research, where there was a very professorial character who, in language that was hard to understand, expressed his desire for you to fill out these surveys and how to do it and when to do it, etc. But then there was also a student character right next to him that would interpret for the student. Kind of annoyed, on her phone, just breaking it down, much more simple in ways that you can understand. And these are characters that I could definitely write because I have been both of those characters. I have a master's in education and have had to write many papers on education at the graduate level. I've taught as an adjunct for Ferris State University, but I've also obviously been a college student, and I can remember the frustrations of, just give it to me simple, just right, just break this down, stop with all of the craziness and all the clutter, just what are we doing? And so I could draw upon those experiences to write these characters. And that's what I would encourage you to do if you're attempting to write characters, is draw from those own experiences. Think about how you felt as a person. Now, if I was making a video, let's say, that contained a character who was an African-American woman, lesbian, trying out for the ballet, if that was one of the characters, I would have a really hard time writing for that character because I'm not African-American. I don't know if you guys could tell. I am also a man. Not sure if you could tell that either. I'm straight, and I don't really know anything about the ballet. So I've been to a few ballets, but I don't really know anything about dancing or anything like that. So it would be really hard for me to draw upon any kind of experiences that would make that character seem real to the people who are like that character. People who, if someone was a black woman, lesbian, who was trying out for the ballet, watch that, they'd be like, if I attempted to write it, they'd probably not resonate with it at all and not really understand, because I have no idea where they're coming from. So it'd be very difficult, and I would have to probably enlist someone else to help me with developing that character. These characters I knew pretty well, and so that's what I drew upon to create this video. So let's watch it.
Let's watch it. Do you want to dim the lights, Taylor? Our intern Taylor is in the booth. No, we did not. Well, not in this display.
Not in this format.
No.
Greetings and salutations, GRCC students. My name is Professor Simons, and I'll be carefully expressing the varying complexities surrounding the post-course institutional research and planning evaluations.
Hi. This is about class surveys.
Instructors hope to leverage the valuable and varied responses provided by students to refine our objectives and better align our course to accommodate the ever-changing and demographically diverse student body.
If you like a class, you can let them know. If you don't like a class, you can help fix it.
Typically, around 14 days prior to the end of your course, you will receive the relevant evaluation URLs associated with your specific courses.
2 weeks before the class ends, you get the survey.
You may fill out your evaluation anytime between the time you've received the evaluation and exactly 11:59 p.m. on the scheduled last day of...
Fill it out before the last day of class.
If you realize you've answered any question erroneously, email course...
If you messed up, email details to courseeval@grcc.edu from your college email.
Once your class is completed and final grade information is posted, the instructor,
They read the surveys after grades are posted.
you can rest assured that no instructor will be able to determine,
It's anonymous.
in the rare case you somehow do not receive an evaluation to fill out,
If you didn't get one, email courseeval@grcc.edu.
there are just a couple more components of the process to briefly consider.
Oh, one more thing.
Be sure to understand the spectrum of choice you have before.
Left side disagree, right side agree. Be sure about it and gotta click submit.
If there are any more questions you have regarding the process of course evaluations, do not.
There's FAQs if you need them.
And finally, I want to take the time to thank you for your time while watching this informative and hopefully fun video about course evaluations.
Adios.
So make sure to fill out your survey at the end of every class.
Okay, so I kind of talked quite a bit before the video, so I won't talk any more about it. Are there any questions after all of that? Anything at all? It's totally cool. You can ask.
Yeah, I think it's also important to know that we were asked to do that video just like we're asked to do all the projects we work on. And even though somebody's a content expert, what they give you to work with lots of times sounds like what the professor character sounded like. So Noah was provided this list of things to cover that probably wasn't too far away from what the professor said. And when we get something like that, we know who's the audience. We have to simplify this and make it at least a little entertaining.
Yeah, honestly, for probably 50% of what the professor character says, I honestly just looked at the instructions on the website for course evals, and it was pretty complicated already. So I just sort of added onto a lot of that.
Okay, so next we're going to talk about simple learning objects. Like I just said, lots of times what people give us to work with is a list. And anytime you're expected to learn something and you're operating from a set of instructions, you're following a list in order. And we could just duplicate that list in a video, but again, that wouldn't necessarily be very entertaining. So we try to come up with some approach to conveying that information that hopefully makes it memorable to you. And one thing we've learned over the last decade is that what people retain are things they learn in short bursts. They're evaluated on it somehow to make sure they got it, and then they can move on to something else. And the expectation that anybody is going to sit down and watch an hour-long lecture online, we know it doesn't happen. We record a lot of them. People watch a few minutes here and there of any lecture we've recorded, but we can tell, because YouTube gives us statistics, how little of a long lecture anybody is going to watch. So knowing that, we've got basically a short attention span, we've gotten in the practice of making sure that what we're creating is relatively short. And what we're going to show you now is an academic example for the math department of teaching a particular subject. And without explaining what the subject is, what I want you to look for is a technique we often use, and in fact, Noah did it right when we were starting, where we tell you what we're going to teach you, you get to learn it, and then we review what it is we supposedly taught you. So using that model, we apply it to a short video, and we end up with something like this. So wait for Taylor to dim the lights.
Hi, I'm Nancy Forrest, a mathematics professor at Grand Rapids Community College. And today I want to introduce you to a slightly different way of looking at circles. Yes, I said circles. Now you may be thinking that you already know about circles. You know there's some kind of formula for calculating the circumference of a circle. And once you know that, what else is there? What else is there Well, it's actually very simple. It isn't new, but it's a different way of looking at something that you probably already know. But first, let's start with the basics. There's a wonderful number called pi, and as you can see from my shirt, it's my favorite number. And that's because with pi, we can calculate amazing things. Simply put, pi is the ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter. It always has the same value, no matter what the size of the circle. And the value of pi is approximately 3.14. Perhaps the most famous formula that uses pi is for the circumference of a circle. And you may recognize it, 2 pi r, where r is the radius of the circle, like this, and the value of pi is 3.14. It's simple. Just plug in the two numbers and voila, you know the circumference of the circle. But if you look at this formula carefully, you may notice that as simple and elegant as it is, there's a way to make it more simple and more elegant. Do you see it? Do you see it yet? What you might have noticed is there's a way of doing something that we in mathematics call reducing in calculating the beginning of the formula 2 times pi, where we just double the value of pi to get one number, and then you can multiply it by the radius. And what do we call this new number? Double pi? Nope. The name for the value of 2 pi is another Greek letter, and that's the lesson for today. Instead of 2 pi, we call this number tau. And since its value is twice pi, the simpler formula is tau times r equals the circumference. Simpler. And in math, simpler is better. So let's do a quick review. So the original formula for calculating the circumference of a circle was the classic 2 pi r. We simplified by doubling pi, 2 times 3.14, and that new value of 6.28 equals tau. So the new simpler formula reads tau r, and that equals the circumference of a circle. So today you learned about the value of tau. And you also learned that you can sometimes even take one of the most famous formulas in math and make it better. Now don't get me wrong, my favorite number is still pi. But since today is June 28, you know, 628, we'll let tau rule today. Happy Tau Day, and thanks for watching.
So I'm not a mathematician. I just worked with a mathematician to understand the concept, and it's not that complicated a concept. But I wrote that script, ran it by the mathematician. She memorized the lines. Noah and I last summer shot it right across the street here in the practice field, and he did a really nice job editing that together. But that's another example of the kind of work we do that we found to be pretty effective. If we can create an entertaining lesson, short period of time. I think this is also a good example of casting. We didn't have to cast someone to play a math professor. Nancy Forrest is a math professor, but she also has a really good presence on camera. She's got good energy. She seems to be having fun every time she's been in front of the camera, so we lucked out there. But all those things together hopefully end up creating something that all of you, now if somebody asks you, what's tau? You'll know what the answer is. So any questions about that process?
Klaas, if you could maybe explain how you actually went about putting those words on the page. So how did you go from here's an idea, we want to teach people about tau in 3 minutes, to here's the script? What was the process like?
Well, I think you have to start with a basic understanding of what you're trying to teach. And again, I'm not a mathematician. I didn't know what tau was before I talked about it with Nancy Forrest. I did know the formula 2 pi r, and hopefully everyone here who's had geometry is familiar with that formula. It happened to be in the news, I think, so that sparked some interest. And I approached Nancy. I said, hey, if we were to sit down and come up with a video, what would you want to include? And then she and I together took the time to look at other videos that had been done trying to explain what tau was, most of which took a lot longer to do it. And I think sometimes if you spend too much time trying to explain something, people not only stop listening, but they'll end up being more confused than when you started. So we gleaned from all that information, what is the core of this? And then decided, okay, where can we stage it so we're not just in front of a whiteboard, or in the case of her at the end, in front of what we call a light board, explaining it the way a teacher typically would in front of a class. So we said, let's go out to the practice field. We'll use a couple of cameras, one that's up high, so we've got all this space to work with to draw a circle, and Nancy could move around, another camera getting a close-up to get her funny expressions. So we take all that information about what we're trying to teach, we put it on one side of a page so she knows what she's going to say, and then on the other side of the page are the corresponding visuals so that she can picture, even before we've shot anything or showed her any of the footage that we recorded, what's going to be on the screen when she's talking. So Nancy, as the content expert, can say, yes, class, you got that right. That's a good suggestion. That's a way to do it. Or no, don't do that. That'll just confuse students, or that's not accurate. So that's basically the process, is to write something, go back and forth with the person who actually can verify if it's accurate. Because I'm doing my best. I'm not a mathematician. I'm just trying to make it fun and memorable. Sometimes we go a little too far, but usually professors will tell us, no, that's not accurate, we need to change it. And then we record it.
Cool.
Any other questions? Okay. So for the next part of our presentation,
Anybody have any questions just about life, non-related to this, that you just really need to ask? Or no? Okay. Well, just let us know if you do.
we're ready.
We're ready for anything. Okay, our last example I'm going to talk about is a cooking show that has been produced here at the college for quite a while. We have a culinary institute here, if you guys didn't know, where people learn to cook and be chefs. And one of our former chef instructors, whose name was Angus Campbell, for a long time did a little cooking show here on campus that we would produce. And a couple years ago, we got a grant to be able to really up the production quality of this cooking show for about a dozen episodes. And we got to travel abroad and make this show, and it was great. It's sort of an intersection of cooking, documentary, travel, and culture, much like Anthony Bourdain. I'm sure you guys maybe seen something about Anthony Bourdain, a show that he's done, perhaps. Probably not as good as those shows. In fact,
Better.
Sure, definitely not as good. Better, yeah. We wish, but it's certainly along the same vein as far as styling. And how do you write for a show like that? It's quite a challenge to kind of figure it out. But once we got a groove going, it actually worked really well. During the actual production, Klaas and I would just sort of shoot whatever happens. We would do some directing, like where we wanted them to stand, what we might want them to talk about specifically. But really, it was just many things happening all the time that we were just trying to capture and keep up with. We would go to a Parmesan cheese factory and shoot the whole process of them making Parmesan cheese and tasting it. Then we'd run across the village to balsamic vinegar, a facility in which they made balsamic vinegar, and do the same sort of thing. And we're just trying to keep up and shoot everything. So when we get back back to work, which sometimes seems like home. When we get back to work and we've got all this footage, hours and hours of footage to comb through, there are considerations you need to make. Number one being, how do we make this into a story? So that's what we're really trying to do, is tell a story in each episode. So the challenge became, for example, one episode, how do you take 3 hours of footage, cut it down to 30 minutes, and have it be interesting, entertaining, and tell a cool story? And what we found was a good method was to take the best of the best that we had on video, cut those together, and fill the gaps. That's why we have filling the gaps here. Fill the gaps of the coolest and best moments with some of our own writing that would eventually be a voiceover from the host, the chef instructor, Angus Campbell. We're going to show you an example of what that is, but my process was to, again, find some really cool moment, cut that together, move to the next piece, the next part of the story, and connect the story through writing what would make sense to the audience, helping them to understand what is happening here, what is going on, how is it all connected. This typically manifested itself in establishing people, places, what we're doing. So often at the beginning of segments, this voiceover, what I'm writing, would establish that. Where are we? Who are these people? What are we doing? Why? That's what I would write about at the very beginning, what Angus would voice over, and then we'd show the segment. When I was actually editing everything together, I would actually record my own voice saying all these little bits that I've written to connect the pieces and pop it in, pop it in as a placeholder. And then once the whole episode was done, I'd have Angus come in and record his voice saying all those little pieces that I've written that connect the bits of the story together. Everybody tracking on that so far? Any questions about how I did that? Right. Let's just watch it, see what happens.
I wanted Megan and April to learn how an olive plucked off the tree becomes the olive oil we use in the kitchen. Here in Puglia at the Montaltino factory, Nicola helped us understand the modern process of making olive oil. So they come in these large crates, straight off the trees.
With these big boxes, they're emptied in this tank here and they get cleaned up. So after they're all cleaned up, they come through and they go to purifying process, which if there are some impurities like little stones, soil, they will be all cleaned. So after these olives, they're all washed, they come through and they're dropped into this big mill.
They just get ground down into a paste.
They get ground down to a paste, yes.
Okay. After the paste has been homogenized, it goes into the presses. The first pressing, which separates the pulp from the oil, is considered extra virgin, used mostly to finish dishes. The second pressing is a second quality used mainly for cooking. And the third is put back into the ground as fertilizer. From the presses, the oil is filtered and put into 2,000-ton silos. Finally, they're ready to be bottled. Girls, come and see this. This is a beautiful little model of the way it used to be. With all, you see, this is the little press and the little stone. Look at the wee wheels that would crush the thing, yeah. And it ends up in little bottles. That's so funny. Inside the dining area of Osteria del Carosena is a piece of Italian history. An old mill used for making olive oil sits inside the floor for the guests to see. The Italians we've met have been so generous, and that theme continued as the talented chef of the restaurant so graciously offered to teach my students a couple of amazing plates.
Buonasera a voi, ciao. Allora, we are going to make 2 plates of Italian plate, yes? One is classic Italian, which is spaghetti carbonara, and one is fave e cicoria. Fave beans, yes, with chicory. This is very slow, dry pasta.
So if you want to see more of that, cookingwithangus.com is where you can watch more. But that gives you an example of the process that we took to write the various components of Angus's voiceover that hopefully connected the story for you. There were 2 examples of that in that clip. The first one did what I mentioned before. It establishes who we are, what we're doing, why we're doing it, where we are. Because when we were shooting those scenes, nobody really did that. We didn't really all stop and say, okay, let's all explain, like, let's introduce each other. Let's talk about who we are and why we're here. And if they did, usually it took a really long time. So this, in a way, made it much quicker, much simpler, easier for the audience to understand, and we can get right into the good stuff. The second voiceover within the clip that explained the process that the olive goes through while it's getting pressed and turned into oil. That was done because the actual process, as it was being explained to us and we recorded it, took an extremely long time. And obviously, I'm not going to put an audience through 15, 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes of explanation when in 30 seconds, I can write a voiceover that much more easily explains it, and we just show a few shots and then get right back to the good stuff. So again, using writing to fill those gaps, to make it more entertaining, more simple, easier to understand, and connect the story. Another method that we've used here in media.
Yeah, it makes me think the 2 examples that Noah's talked about, that first one with the student and the professor, and then this one, are really good examples of how writing compresses time. Because if he hadn't taken the time to figure out how to say something more succinctly, those videos would have been a lot longer. And that's another value of taking the time to write something well, is you're going to be able to convey the information a lot quicker and hopefully more memorably.
Any questions about the Cooking with Angus video or filling gaps, telling stories with some voiceover writing?
Nope.
Okay.
Well, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Hope you are all ready for a quiz on how to make olive oil, what tau is.
And how to calculate tau.
Yeah.
And if you can take your course survey.
Yeah, do your surveys. They matter. Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for coming.